Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, detained British journalist Sami Hamdi is set to return home.
Sami's done nothing wrong. He's a journalist. What he's done is spoken out in support of Palestinian rights and spoken up to criticize the state of Israel, who continues to conduct a genocide against the Palestinian people.
We'll hear about Sami's detention in the U.S. and the fight to free him. I'm Malika Bilal, and this is The Take. Hi. A note before we go on. As you're watching this episode, leave us a comment telling us what you think about the conversation. It's a more personal glimpse into one family's life, and we want to hear how it resonates. Or on your podcast app, leave us a review telling us where you're listening from, and feel free to give us a 5-star rating while you're there. It helps other people discover the show. Thanks.
I get a call from him, or a message actually, on WhatsApp, telling me, hey, there are government agents waiting for me before getting into my plane, and they just informed me that they have revoked my visa to the U.S.
That's Hussam Ayloush, CEO of the California chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR. The text was from Sami Hamdi, the British Muslim journalist and political commentator who was in the U.S. on a speaking tour when he was detained at San Francisco International Airport. Hussam says Sami wanted to know what he should do next.
I said, once you verify they are government agents, you shouldn't resist. The rest is, we found out that he was abducted by ICE and taken into a detention center.
Sami would be detained for more than 2 weeks. He's now due to be released. But why was he detained in the first place?
This is an attempt to intimidate people like Sami Hamdi, to intimidate other journalists, foreign journalists, to tell them, listen, in this country, in America, you don't get to criticize Israel. The irony of things, if you only criticized the U.S., you would have been fine.
Sami is well known for his passionate advocacy on behalf of the Palestinian people.
No one should ever forget who's at the center of the story. The ones who are at the center of the story are the ones who are still being bombed today. They're still being slaughtered today. They're still being starved today because some random group of people from the West believe this to be some sort of home of theirs. They're being massacred. They're being bombed into oblivion. They're being ethnically cleansed. Their homes are being demolished. They are the center of the story.
Hussam says his organization, CAIR, was one of the groups that had invited Sami to the U.S. to speak to American Muslims about their role in stopping the genocide in Gaza. Sami had already been in the U.S. for several days, traveling on a visa he'd had for years when he was detained. From that moment, Hussam, CAIR, and a team of lawyers worked to secure Sami's release.
The minute we heard about Sami's abduction by ICE, we activated and mobilized the community. We brought in our allies and formed various civil rights organizations. Our team of lawyers immediately was dispatched to work on the case. Also, this was an issue dealing with the public. We needed to inform the public.
Sami's wife, Soumaya Hamdi, was a big part of that push to raise awareness about his detention. In op-eds and interviews, she's had to defend her husband against false accusations that he supports terrorism, all while caring for their 3 children and wondering when she'd be able to see him again. I spoke to Soumaya on Wednesday, following news that her husband would be released. Well, Soumaya, welcome to The Take. You have been solo parenting your 3 kids for a few weeks now. And while that is Herculean in itself, I know, you have been doing it with the added stress of not knowing when your husband might be allowed to come home. Then on Monday came the news that you've likely been waiting for. The U.S. government agreed to release Sami Hamdi, and he's due back in the U.K. with you anytime now. So first of all, how are you doing?
I mean, the past 2.5 weeks has been a complete nightmare, Malika. Really. There's no other real word for it, We've just been trying to get through each day. It's been such a stress to help Sami, to help his case, and that's been a huge comfort for all of us.
Mm. How old are your kids?
10 years, 6 years, and 10 months. baby.
Oh my gosh, a 10-month-old. So you have your
Yeah.
hands full. How are you explaining this to them?
I mean, we were supposed to fly out to see Sami the day after this happened. So actually, I was finishing up packing for our trip. We were going to go to New York. We hadn't seen Sami for a while. We had a whole trip planned. We were going to meet some friends there and do some sightseeing in New York City and all of these amazing things. And then, of course, that's never happened. And so it's been hard for the kids to understand, firstly, why didn't we fly out to see Baba? Why? What's the problem? So in the beginning, we kind of told them, well, he's coming home. Because that's what we thought, at the beginning, I thought, well, okay, his visa's been revoked. So they'll just send him on the next flight out to London, right? Because that seems like the most logical thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of cascaded into this ridiculous, awful, dystopian scenario in which Sami has been detained and incarcerated and shackled. And in the end, all of it because of his outspoken criticism of the state of Israel and for his support of Palestinian rights.
Well, before we talk more about his detention, help us paint a picture for those who haven't seen his videos or haven't seen him on his speaking tour. What should the world know about who your husband is?
Sami is the kind of person, he wears his heart on his sleeve. So he is the same at home as he is with everybody else. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many people can connect with him so easily and why he's able to connect with people so well. He, from a young age, he's been very empathetic. He always puts other people before him. He's the kind of person that, like if he had like, I don't know, the last $100 in his account and someone needed it, he would give it away, without thinking about whether or not he needs to use it. That's the kind of person that Sami is. So he's really someone who cares about other people and wants to utilize the blessings that he has been given and the resources that he has, his talents, to help others. And that's really what he does. He is a very eloquent, very talented journalist, political risk analyst, public speaker, and has become really very renowned for galvanizing support for the Palestinian cause. And unfortunately, this is why he has landed on the radar of some unsavory far-right social media warriors who are upset with people who are coming out and speaking up in support of Palestinian rights. One of the first ways I actually got to know him, because I knew of him as a person, but he was called in to mediate between two societies at university. They were having a feud. There was some kind of breakdown and it led to a new society being formed. And it was kind of cascading into this really big crisis. And so despite the fact that both societies were not on speaking terms and they were not reconciling, they both agreed and nominated for Sami to be their mediator. And they felt he was the best person to help bring them together and resolve the conflict, which he did in the end, mashallah. And that was one of the earliest contacts that I had of Sami, and so not long after that, we got to know each other. But that's the kind of person that Sami is. That really speaks to him. It speaks to his character. It speaks to his love for bringing people together. And he really does see the innate goodness in people.
Well, that helps explain then why his detention and his story has made international headlines. So I first became aware of him during the course of Israel's genocide in Gaza. And people every few weeks, it seems, would send me links via WhatsApp and text. Have you seen this video? And it would be Sami breaking down eloquently an argument about why what the U.S. was doing was part of this move, this strategic move, and why what Israel was doing would or would not work. And he has this eloquent ability to make you think about something in a way that perhaps you hadn't thought of it before. So he's a prominent speaker who attracts audiences from around the world and hundreds of thousands of views online. But the thing about his story that's striking is also the way he was detained. So you alluded to this earlier. It was in the US, traveling on a valid visa that was suddenly revoked. How did you find out that he had been taken by immigration and customs enforcement agents in San Francisco? What was going through your mind when you heard?
So I had actually tried to call him that morning. He was in California at the time. There's a big time difference between California and London. So it was early afternoon and I had called him. I guess I can't remember what the reason was. I wanted to ask him probably about if he wanted me to bring him something in particular from London. And the line cut, it rang a few times and then the line cut off, like someone had hung up the phone. So I thought, okay, maybe he's live on air. Sometimes if I call him and he's live on air, he'll hang me up so that I don't interrupt the broadcast. And I didn't think too much of it. But then shortly after that, I received a text message from a friend and he said, Soumaya, is it true what I've heard that Sami's been abducted by ICE? And, you know, I don't know if you can imagine, and I hope you never have to receive a message like that about a loved one. But like immediately my blood ran cold. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I couldn't breathe properly. Just immediate panic set in because we've seen what's been happening in the United States over the past year or so. And, you know, Sami's aware of it. He's aware that there are some people that are really unhappy with how effective he has become as a speaker globally. But we also didn't think that he would be targeted because he's never done anything wrong. He has not committed any crime. He's traveling on a valid visa. And as you said, he'd already been allowed into the country. You know, if they didn't want him in the country, they could have refused entry. So I quickly called his agent, Zia, and he confirmed that, yes, it's true. And I immediately, you know, picked up the kids and went straight over to his parents' house and told them. And you can imagine just completely distraught and shocked because up to this point, Sami has not been able to contact us or speak to us directly. We're completely in the dark. We don't know where they're going to take him. We don't know what they're planning. We don't know what they're supposedly charging him with. So just complete panic and stress. And I don't think that we've recovered since that. I think we've been operating on this high stress level environment since then because of all the kind of secrecy around the whole thing, you know, like the ICE were not forthcoming to provide information, which we know they're not. And it was only several hours later, it was in the middle of the night around midnight, he was able to call me for a very short call. And I said to him, are you okay? Like, are you okay? Is everything okay? And he said, I'm fine. And then I said, okay, like, please tell me, where are you? Like, where have they taken you? So he told me he was in McFarland, with Golden State Annex Detention Center. And that was really all we had time for. I didn't have time really to check in with him properly, to see if he really is okay or he's not just saying that so that we don't panic, because he knew that we would be panicking. But as soon as he told me the location of the facility, at the very least we could speak to CAIR, because CAIR, Hussam, Ayloush, Sister Zahra, and also HMA and Muslim Legal Fund have been absolutely amazing throughout this whole ordeal, because they immediately organized themselves very quickly to create a legal team for Sami and to get themselves out there to the detention center and ensure that he's represented.
Yeah. What do you know about the conditions that he was being held under?
They're awful. I know that he's been sharing and continues to share a room with between 80 to 90 people. If you can imagine, you know, like at nighttime, during the day, constantly, there's no privacy. Sleeping, you don't get much sleep at night. And you feel like it's this general kind of trying to grate away at his mental state and his physical state. And not long after, I think it was about 2 days after they detained him, in the middle of the night, they decided to drive him an hour and a half away to another detention center in Fresno just to process him. And to do this, they handcuffed his wrists, they cuffed his ankles, they put him in a cell for the night and made him sleep on the floor. I think he said they gave him a yoga mat to lie on, and that was it. And they kept him cuffed in the cell. And he hasn't committed any crime, Malika, you know? He's being treated in this awful way, and he's done nothing wrong. His only crime is speaking up in support of Palestinian rights and criticizing a foreign government.
As far as you know, when is Sami due to return to the UK? What have you been told?
We're kind of just waiting with bated breath to hear that Sami's on the plane, honestly. So we're really hopeful. You know, he's already been granted voluntary return by the US government, which means he's not being deported. It means that he has been given the option to return home to the UK voluntarily. So in my mind, I don't understand why he continues to be detained. It doesn't make sense to me. Sami from the beginning has said, if you've revoked my visa, I'm more than happy to take the next flight out to London. And in fact, he was informed that his visa was revoked in the airport. So they could have just
an
put him
international airport, right? So it would
in
have
an
been easy
international airport
to head to the international terminal.
Exactly. It would have been so easy just to book the next flight out for him to London, and they said no.
We'll have more with Soumaya after the break. Well, Soumaya, you wrote an op-ed for USA Today calling for your husband's release with a message to the U.S. government to, quote, reaffirm that America's strength lies in defending freedom of speech, not silencing it, end quote. And you actually got a response. The official account of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security posted a screenshot of your article on X and replied, quote, the U.S. has no obligation to host foreigners like Sami Hamdi who support terrorism and actively undermine the safety of Americans. Did they ever provide any evidence of that?
Nothing. You know, what's most alarming about this case, I think, Malika, is that publicly the DHS, the Department for Homeland Security, has been saying one thing. They have been sharing these awful allegations, baseless, outrageous allegations publicly, but privately have presented no evidence. They have not even charged Sami with any crime related to any of the allegations that they are making online. And so I think it's very clear to us that they are trying to pander to this online movement that is trying to shut down critical speakers of the State of Israel, and at the same time recognizing the limits of the law and recognizing that you cannot hold a person who has committed no crime, and you cannot charge a person when you have not even one shred of evidence that he's committed a crime. And this is the United States government. The fact that they have given him the option to voluntarily return home means that they know 110% that Sami has never committed any crime at all. There is no way they would be releasing him like this if they had even a shred of doubt about his credibility, and if they had even any concern about him being, as they've said, a risk to national security.
Well, Soumaya, you referenced right-wing activists who are at the heart of this, and the way this all unfolded is quite remarkable. You have these right-wing activists tweeting about Sami being in the U.S., calling for his arrest and his deportation. Then a few days later, Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin announces that Sami's visa has been revoked. Sam Ayloush from CAIR, who we spoke to earlier, talked about that, and he points out that they've been taking credit for Sami's detention.
We suspect that he came to the attention of the DHS and other government agencies through the voices of well-known anti-Palestinian and anti-Muslim extremists. Laura Loomer and others, a lot of these hate mongers have taken credit in disrupting his life. The Islamophobes within our government and the pro-Israelis know that if you want to silence a critic of Israel, you call them and label them an anti-Semite. And if they happen to be Muslim, you just throw in the label of terrorism. And usually it used to work, but not anymore.
I wonder what you make of how all this happened. Do you think this will continue to work?
I think what we're seeing is a desperate attempt to try to salvage what is left of a battered and bruised reputation of the State of Israel. I think what we're seeing now is desperation. You know, never before in living memory have journalists been detained for criticizing a foreign government in a democracy, particularly in the United States, in which your freedom of speech is probably protected in the United States more than any other country, actually, I think, more than any other democracy. It's unheard of, you know? And there is this last-ditch, desperate attempt to try to regain control over this war of narratives. You know, we've seen a few months back the sale of TikTok to pro-Israel Zionist millionaires and billionaires. This is an attempt to regain the control of the narrative on Israel and on what is happening, what is being done to Palestinians. And they've not been shy about it at all. I think even just last week, we know that YouTube erased more than 700 videos showing war crimes that have been committed by Israeli soldiers. So this really is a last-ditch attempt to try and save face, and it's not working, and people are not buying it at all.
Well, Soumaya, you mentioned earlier about how you and your kids had been planning to join Sami in New York at the end of his speaking tour for this nice family vacation. When you look back on this episode in all of your lives, what do you want for your kids to understand about what happened and about their father?
I want them to understand that their father, Sami, is a hero. He is someone who's always spoken truth to power, and he has done so with great courage. And I want them to understand that while, yes, we didn't get to spend this wonderful family holiday together, there was a greater cause that their father was fighting, which is the right for people to be able to speak up, to speak truth to power, to speak up for what is right, which is a noble cause. And we are really very proud of him. We are immensely proud of him. And we're really honored to have him I'm honored to have him as my husband. The kids are honored to have him as their dad, and now we're just waiting and hoping for that sweet reunion. Sami has been in our hearts and in our minds every minute of every day that this nightmare has continued, and all we want now is just to be reunited as a family.
Well, Soumaya, I wish that for you. Thank you so much for walking us through what has had to be the hardest few weeks of your life. I appreciate it.
Thank you.